All right. Hey, you ready? Don't say born ready. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Hey, you're back with the Get Out Deck guy, the old Get Out Deck guy that now has his voice back again, and the new Get Out of Debt guy, Damon Day. And before I forget, Damon, before you say hello, I want to remind people that if they want to reach you, they should go to damonday.com, DAMONDAY.com. Hello, Damon.
Hey, Steve.
So today we're talking about a topic that is near and dear to my heart, which is now that you have survived a financial tsunami or earthquake or whatever, what should you do next? Because uh, now that you've taken care of that through whatever means, that doesn't mean that's the end of the road for you. And Damon, I think that you could agree with me in saying that people, after they get through their troubles, that some of them have said to you, "What's next?"
Yeah, today we are not the get out of debt guys. Today we're the stay out of debt guys.
Well,
Yeah. Yep.
there's a lot to do after you get out of debt. And, part of it, so I've always looked at it as you need sort of a future proof plan because there are a lot of things that people are afraid of after they've dealt with their debt. Like they don't want to get back in that situation. I understand that completely. But that alone can leave you making bad decisions in itself because think of the people who like avoid credit afterwards because they're afraid of it or it creates pain for them. And that only delays their credit score recovery.
Yeah. Yeah. And, everybody's different. So it just depends on, their personality, their situation, where they're at in life. And, for some people, the Dave Ramsey way of just completely avoid credit, maybe that's the right answer. Because they just have such a hard time dealing with it. But for other people, that's an answer that doesn't really serve them very well.
So the numbers are interesting because let's say you file bankruptcy or you've stopped paying your cards or whatever because you're going to settle them. What's interesting is that period of time right after that occurs is when you'll actually be able to save the most amount of money, right? Because your obligations have ended and now you can rebuild and earn more and you don't have those expenses anymore. It's like you've been digging yourself out of debt for so long. Now you've got a little period of time here where you can coast. And here's where I think a lot of people run into trouble is all of a sudden they feel such freedom that it's very easy to start overspending again.
Well,
And
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
and there are some things that I'd like to see people do, and I would love to see people contact you for coaching and encouragement and handholding in working through this process because, we've talked many times about people don't know what they don't know when they're suffering with debt problems. Well, the flip side is true too. People don't know what they should prioritize or do on the way out. And working with someone like you, I actually just read that um, can make them much wealthier in retirement and in their happiness and in their future because they can recover the right way.
Yeah.
So,
Well, you
mhm,
mentioned, right when you're out of debt. I mean, that's a real critical point because, whether you're doing, a Dave Ramsey type of debt snowball or you're, negotiating your debts, you're settling them, you're on a credit counseling type program where they've lowered your interest rates and you've got a plan and okay, I'm going to be out of debt in 40 months or you
mhm,
filed, bankruptcy, whatever it is, at some point you're going to, hey, I'm debt free. Maybe you get
right.
on Dave Ramsey's show and you scream it or whatever you're going to do. But at some point when you hit that mark, you're in a critical point. You're at a critical point because from a lifestyle standpoint, a cash flow standpoint, up until that time, you've been focused on, saving money to pay off this debt. Short of the bankruptcy, everything else you've got this amount of money every month that's set aside or paying on cards or whatever it is. And then all of a sudden, like you said, you feel this freedom, like, oh my gosh, I'm debt free. It's done. And right now we have whatever, $1,000 a month that for the last 3 years has been allocated for this debt repayment journey that we've been on. And now, we feel great. Now we've got this extra money. Now we're feeling good. Now we're starting to eat out at restaurants more. Now we're going to just go celebrate a little bit. And there's nothing wrong with some celebration, but that is the point where ideally you want to have a plan before you hit to that point of what you're going to do. But for sure, when you get to that point, that's when you really want to sit down and say, okay, where are we at in life? What are our plans moving forward? What are we trying to accomplish here? Right now at this moment, we have $1,000 a month in our budget that was earmarked for something that it does not have to be earmarked for anymore. Consciously, what do we want to do with it? Because if we don't make a conscious effort of where we're going to allocate those funds,
they're going to be gone.
I promise you, those funds will get allocated. And it will just get assimilated back into your lifestyle. And then you'll wake up in a few months and go, what happened to that extra $1,000?
Yeah, why am I in trouble again?
Yeah, it'll just kind of get assimilated. Whereas at that moment, if you earmark it for something else, you can now, let's focus on savings. Let's focus on this. Let's focus on this without having to adjust your current lifestyle at all because you're at that level. You haven't had that access to that money for a year, 2 years, 3 years, so you're not going to miss it. But once you assimilate that into your lifestyle,
it's gone.
Then we should come up with a plan. We should start saving more. Now you're having to scale back your lifestyle again, which is a pain point.
Yeah, it's funny. For some reason, there's a map of India on my computer screen right now. And right in the center of the screen is the name of a town in India. It's called Lucknow. And Lucknow, after you get out of debt, is not what you need. You need a plan. And here's one of the primary benefits of working with you or somebody after you've survived a financial disaster is everyone afterwards needs accountability. They need somebody that they can check in with that can let them know, hey, you're on a good path. Or, you know what? Maybe we should change things. A debt coach like Damon, after you've survived a financial trauma, is like a hitting coach in baseball. Right? The kid thinks that they know exactly how to hit, but the coach has experience to point out things that they could do better.
Well, it's funny, to keep with your baseball analogy, you sit there and you go, why does guys like Mike Trout and Bryce Harper have hitting coaches? Who's teaching the guys that are the best in the world?
Right.
But yet they still have coaches, because even if you're really good at something, it doesn't mean you're seeing everything. And a coach can sometimes step back and look at what's going on and say, hey, look, I know you know this, but here's what I'm observing is going on.
Well, when it comes to the money issues, this was a real eye-opener for me. So back in the day, one of the services that we offered our clients was their money would come to us, we would pay their bills, help them to save money, and essentially give them an allowance to live after we've paid all their obligations. And one of the things that we learned early on was don't volunteer to the client how much money we've managed to save for them. Because, they just survived a financial disaster. We're doing great. This is the first time we've built up $1,000 for you in an emergency fund. And the minute they would hear that, they would be like, ooh, I need a new TV, right? And they would spend it. So I'm not saying that people aren't capable of dealing with their money by themselves. What I am saying is there are so many underlying things which drive the decisions that people make unconsciously that set you up for failure. Last time we talked about hyperbolic discounting, where you're putting more emphasis on today than the future. But during that period where you have suddenly have more money in your pocket each month, that is the time where we need to first build up an emergency fund, We don't have to go gangbusters. You can have fun. You can go out, but we need to build that emergency fund right afterwards. And I have found also in working with probably hundreds, if not thousands of people afterwards, that knowing that they need to check in with me helped to keep them on the straight and narrow a little bit longer.
Well, it's just like having a workout partner. You're more likely to get up at 6 a.m. and go to the gym if you know somebody is there waiting for you.
Well, and after you've survived the financial thing, one of the scams that I have seen people fall for the last 30 years is the whole credit repair scam.
Yeah.
Right? We don't need you to magically spend thousands of dollars to repair your credit. We need to rebuild your credit. And I can tell you how to do that. And it can happen rather quickly. You don't need to pay a credit repair company to do that. You just need a coach.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing a credit repair company can do for you that you can't do for yourself. It's just a matter of looking at your credit report and trying to see if there's some things that you might be able to get taken off of there with a letter. But there are no, as Steve likes to say, I call them the magic beanstalk letters.
Yeah.
There's no magic words that you can put on a form where if you, and most of these are just forms you send in, you click right from
right on the screen
website. Yeah. And it's just a form and say, hey, I'm disputing this, check the box, the reason why. And it's a process that it goes through. Sometimes it might come off your report, sometimes it won't. But the reality is there are some things that you can get off and there are some things that will probably stay on there. And there's only so much of that you can control. There's no special things that you can say, oh, well, I wrote my letter and I couldn't get it off, so I'm going to go pay this other company.
No.
And they have special words that I'm not aware of.
No.
And those special words are going to get this thing off. Now, there is, something where if you, it's a service where if you don't want to write your own letters, then you could say, well, maybe I'm going to hire one of those companies because I just don't want to deal with it.
You just click on the screen. You don't even have to write a letter.
I get it. I'm just saying, if that's your motivation, because like anything else, you could do anything yourself that you wanted to, but you might want to pay somebody. I'm just saying, I don't want you to feel like you have to pay if it's not something you want to do, because a lot of this stuff is going to kind of fall off on its own. And the more you focus on doing better moving forward, the more the quicker the good things are going to push the bad things down.
Oh, absolutely.
And the older those things get, like if you have a charge off on your credit or something like that, you don't have to wait 7.5 years where they say, well, it's going to be on there for 7.5 years. Yeah, it's true. It may be on there possibly, but it's not going to, when it's 6 years old, it's not going to affect your FICO score the same as it affects your FICO score when it happened 2 months ago.
All right. If you have the last 12 to 18 months are good credit and you're using it responsibly, that goes a whole lot further. So let me break this down. Immediately after you've started to recover, in the first 3 to 6 months, I think that this is always what I focused on, was that people needed an emotional and mental reset to deal with how they felt going through this and how they feel about handling money moving forward, because we don't need people making bad decisions out of shame, guilt, or embarrassment. And we also need to stabilize the cash flow. We need to prioritize the essentials. We need to think about, do you need a new vehicle coming up? What's going on? How are you going to manage your money moving forward? There's no right or wrong answer here. We just need to know and be on the same page. I talked about building that small emergency fund, checking out your credit report, and let's easily fix those errors. Credit report, to get it, a copy of all of your major credit reports, you can go to annualcreditreport.com. It's free. And if there's something incorrect on your report, you can just click on the link. And if you want to talk it over with someone, that's what your freaking debt coach is there for. And also, you need to avoid scams because you're most likely to be scammed at that point. So in the next 6 to 18 months afterwards, this is really the time that we're focusing on rebuilding exceptionally good credit. I have seen it work so many times where people can have good credit within a year afterwards. And within a couple of years, you're qualified to buy a house, get a mortgage, buy a car, all that stuff. This BS about you have to wait 10 years or something after a bankruptcy or a credit problem, I don't know where that started from, but that is just wrong.
Oh, that for sure started from the banks. Absolutely.
Trying to scare you into pain.
Oh, just putting it out there. Yeah, absolutely. All you got to do is say, well, who stands to lose if you file bankruptcy or if you negotiate debt? Who gets hurt? I'm doing air quotes if you don't pay a credit card bill.
Yeah.
Right. So, and there's a difference between being on your credit report and having a negative effect on your credit report that prevents you from purchasing a car or purchasing a house or requiring you to pay a higher interest rate or whatever. I hear from clients all the time that they were surprised how fast their credit recovered after we settled the debt or they went bankrupt or whatever it was, and not without any outside input, without even having to go in and dispute any of this stuff, just the report correcting on its own. Because keep in mind, if you settle the debt or you go bankrupt or whatever, yeah, you've got that the negative, it charged off or you were behind, or you have those things on your credit report. But you know what you don't have? $100,000 in debt that you owe.
Yeah.
And your utilization rate maxed out at that point either. So that is actually going to have a very positive effect and help to counterbalance the fact that you were behind at one point or you went bankrupt or whatever it was. And people are surprised that usually if you're negotiating debts and you're having all these negative things hit your credit report at one time, it's kind of like ripping off the Band-Aid. But then once you get everything resolved and you get 12, 18 months out from that event, people go, oh gosh, my credit's better than it was before I started.
For years.
And I don't have to pay this $3,000 a month anymore on these credit cards. This is great.
Well, so in the 6 to 18 month range, you should be focused on continuing to rebuild your credit. And you can talk to Damon about easy ways that you can get good credit reported on your credit report. Not sneaky, not devious, not anything else, not any of these scam company things.
Wait, no, I thought the best way is to go online and pay money and get somebody's social security number, right? And then, or you can pay for the service that you essentially get yourself, you pay money. I've heard of this scam. You pay money. It used to work a lot better when authorized users carried more weight on the credit report than they do these days. But and I'm sure it's still around, but there used to be this big one where you would pay money and they would essentially
lend you,
like find people with good credit or steal their information. I'm not sure which they did, or probably both. And they would add you as an authorized user for a certain amount of money. You could pay somebody to be added as an authorized user to somebody with good credit.
Yep.
And then that would therefore build up your credit, which was essentially a scam. I mean, it's not a scam if you're going to go, hey, mom, I'm having a credit challenge. Do you think you can add me to, a couple of your cards?
Right.
That's not a scam. You're allowed
but the other thing is a scam. And the whole using a fake social security number to apply for credit, that's credit fraud. That's not clever. So when we're talking about using a coach to help you through this period, like one of the things I focused on is, all right, we need to get you back in the credit game, not to get overloaded, but if a good credit score is important for you for the future, you want to get a good mortgage, a low interest rate on a car, you want to keep your homeowner's insurance low because often it's credit score based. Well, then we need to start rebuilding your credit. And I would always keep track on my clients, what balances do you have now on cards? Because they should never exceed 30% of your limit. But if we've got your spending back in line in a good way, you should be paying off those cards in full every month. And just having some accountability and a friend, a coach, someone you trust to talk to about that goes a long way to keeping people on track.
Yeah, and sometimes there's really good uses for utilizing credit cards, especially if you're focused on staying within your budget and you've got an app that tracks all that stuff, so you're not going to be overspending. But using the points on the credit cards. What we like to do is we have an Amex card, and we use that for everything. All of our purchases, everything goes on that card. Keeps it simple. And then it's one of those unlimited platinum cards, right? So there's no interest or anything. You have to pay it in full every month. You don't have, well, technically there is an option to do it, but you pay it in full every month, and you just use it as, we use the Amex as like it's a spending account. is really all it is. And then we do one transfer, right, from our checking account to the American Express card every month. That covers all of our different bills, and by that we incurred that month. And by doing it that way, we've got the security of the Amex card, which American Express is great for that kind of stuff. If there were, we don't have to worry about fraud or anything like that. Or, I mean, imagine somebody steals your debit card.
Right, exactly.
Because you used it at a gas pump or something like that.
Debit cards make no sense. But.
And they now the scammers have access to, you've got $20,000 in your checking account or something like that. Or even if it's $5,000, or $1,000, and they took your money that you were going to spend for groceries, this week or whatever it is. I don't even carry a debit card.
No, me either.
Like, I don't even have one. I mean, I have one. I don't have it on me ever. But we use that American Express, and then we also get points for that too. And we get Home Depot gift cards is what we usually, because we're at Home Depot all the time.
Yeah.
And I usually get a couple $100 a month in Home Depot gift cards just because I use the American Express card to pay all the bills that I would be paying every month anyway. So it's such a no-brainer for me anyway. It's extra security, and I get a few $100s in Home Depot gift cards every month just for simplifying my life and putting all of my bills on one card.
Well, last September, Pam and I took a trip, and we flew first class and stayed at a hotel and used points for the whole thing. It was $0.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. I have heard people say, I don't know if I can be diligent enough to keep the money and pay the balance off in full at the end of the month. To which I say, there is nothing stopping you from paying your balance off weekly, right? You can go in on your bank and you can generate
You can do it every day.
You can do it every day if you want. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just an electronic transfer. You don't have to go into a bank or anything.
Well, that's the funny thing. People are so worried, like, they're going to charge me interest. Well, don't carry a balance.
Yeah.
There's no interest. So
and the secret is that's the way the banks make money. I mean, there's people that are disciplined enough and they have to pay. And people think, why would American Express offer that service? And they're giving you a couple $100s a month in Home Depot. That doesn't make any sense. They're not getting any money.
Somebody else is paying for it.
Yeah. Well, and now granted, I am paying an annual fee for, I think that one's like $600 a year. I'm not saying you have to go get a platinum American Express card.
Yeah.
But we get way more back than we pay for it. But you can use a card with no annual fee if you want to do it. We just happen to like the American Express. But as Steve just said, yes, for every one person they have that uses the card to their advantage, there are probably, I have no idea, for every one person that uses it right, there's probably 10,000 people that don't, So there is a lot of truth from Dave Ramsey's standpoint. I understand what he's saying, which is if I can only give one answer, then I'm going to give the answer that might help more people, right? I think Dave Ramsey's point is very few people have the discipline to do it. So I'm just going to lump everybody in the same and say nobody should do it because more people would get into trouble than it would help.
Well,
I get that.
I will give you that out of generosity, but I completely disagree with Ramsey's approach because if somebody was working with a debt coach afterwards and they were talking through this and they could see the benefits of why this plan worked and you had somebody that you were accountable for, that's how you learn new habits. It's like saying, I cut myself on a knife in my kitchen, so now I need to throw away all my kitchen knives.
Oh, I agree with you on that point. I'm just saying, if Dave's in a point where he has to only give one answer and can't look at individual situations, then he feels the safer answer is just don't pick up a knife.
But he also says use a debit card too, which is insane. So let me get back to...
where's he kind of painted himself into a corner? If his thing is you can't use a credit card, he can't really say don't use a debit card, man.
I know.
He's like, you got to carry cash everywhere.
Yeah.
Where was I at the other day? I got change for something. I can't remember even what it was for.
Oh, I was at a place that said, we do not accept cash.
Yeah, but I remember I got this change, and I'm like, I got to put this in my pocket?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I carry cash, but just to have it. I never use it to buy anything.
Let's get back to this 6 to 18 month period after you're surviving your financial struggles. There are things that a debt coach can really help you with, which is like developing smart money habits, tracking expenses, and making a budget that fits your life. Not a wish list, but how you want to spend your money. Like automating savings, avoiding the new debt traps, keeping you away from these easy approval loans or subprime credit card offers with predatory fees just because you think that you can't qualify for a regular card. And here's the big thing. Once you have gone through that mental decompression in the 6 months after you just dealt with your finances, this is what I think is the best time for people to get excited and motivated to start increasing their income with side gigs, upskilling, doing other things, being excited about making that extra money, not because you're going to hand it to the creditor, but because you're going to hand it to yourself in your future net worth.
Yeah. Yeah. And like we mentioned earlier in the podcast, that first couple of months, right, when you're out of debt, that's the critical point where you want to sit down and come up with a plan on what to do with not only the excess money that you're going to have in the savings, but like Steve said, that's a good time to actually increase your income if you can, because all that money is now going to you and not to somebody else. And obviously every situation is different. It's very different if I'm, talking to, a 60-year-old married couple, kids are grown, moved out of the house. They just now got out of debt. They don't have much in retirement. That's a very, different conversation than if I'm talking to a 25-year-old that's single with no kids and they got themselves into some debt just after college and now they're finally out of it and they've got a good job with some upward mobility there and they're trying to, plan what to do. Well, they've got, a 40-year time horizon that we can work with versus somebody that's, hey, we're going to be probably retired in less than 10 years. So we really need to focus on that.
If just this side hustle part that I'm talking about. So when you're deep in debt, that's almost the worst time to start a side hustle, but you need it. But it's the worst time because trying to self-motivate out of desperation, it's not the most effective thing. However, you just dealt with your debt. Now you see a future. You see how your money is going to build for you. Now, instead of trying to build a good side hustle out of desperation, you're working out of inspiration. And that is always much more successful. Now, Damon, if you could take somebody who would listen to you and follow your advice about, because you've been the king of developing all this side hustle knowledge. If somebody listened to you and followed your instruction, what is a reasonable amount of money that they could make in a side hustle living near a major metropolitan city?
Well, I mean, that's all over the board. So there's a lot of factors that go into it. Not only the person themselves and their time availability and their motivations and their skills.
Well, more than $500 a month.
Well, yeah. When we just talk about just basic stuff, where if you've listened to our Penny Stupid channel, we're talking about just things like driving Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, Instacart, that just stuff where you can literally get an app on your phone. It's not sexy. Nobody likes it. Oh, that's beneath me. I don't want to be that. I don't want to do that. I don't want people in my car. I don't want my car to smell like burritos, whatever it is. If you live by any kind of a population, these apps, you can make $500 to $1,000 a month very easily. Just you could, just accidentally make that kind of money.
Yeah, but
it's not a lot of money, but it can make a huge difference if you're talking about, hey, we're out of debt, and now I've got this $1,000 a month that I was paying on my credit cards, and now you know what? I'm super motivated to really supercharge my retirement or my savings or whatever. Or my kid's going to be going to college in a couple of years, and I really want to be able to help them out. You add another $1,000 in extra income to the $1,000 you're now saving. Now you've got $2,000 a month. We're talking $24,000 a year.
Oh, well,
you can put towards whatever your goals are.
Let's use your strategy because you've got a really good strategy about multi-apping. And let's not explain that right now, but you work 10 hours a week in a side hustle. That's time that you would have spent. What did you call that before? Your F around time, where you're just sitting in a chair. But if you did 10 hours a week over 7 days, 10 hours, you're probably looking at about $1,600 a month extra money. Now, you're in your 30s or your 40s. This is your prime.
It could be less than that. I mean, I average about $40 an hour.
Okay, but
you know.
So if you're in your 30s and 40s, this is your prime earning for retirement time. You take that side hustle money and you just put it in a 401k or an IRA or something. If you're in your 30s or 40s, you're looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars that will be worth when you retire.
Yeah, I call it DoorDash millionaire.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're young, man, you're willing to, especially if you're like, college student or something like that, DoorDash, Instacart, that kind of stuff, you put, $1,000 a month away when you're that young, just out there door dashing or whatever, you'll have a couple $1,000,000 probably in your retirement account, depending on how much you're putting away.
So if people had been aware over the last year, there were a lot of savings accounts, boring old savings accounts that were paying 5% return that were doing very well. And you could put your emergency fund in something like that. You would have been building up, more free money, getting paid just for parking your money there. And then also as part of the coaching afterwards, we need to start thinking about bigger long-term plans. Like, so you want to buy a house, or we need to think about, tell me what kind of retirement that you want to have. We need to start thinking about longer term goals. But this is why checking in with a coach is so important. It's not to wind your watch, borrow your watch and tell you what time it is. It's to keep you focused on the goals, because daily life will suck you away. And before you know it, time is gone.
Yeah. No, it's so easy to get in your routine. And that's how people end up getting kind of back in debt, right? They get out of the debt. They don't really have a very specific plan to do with what to do with that extra money. Just gets assimilated back into their lifestyle. Their savings don't get funded like they were hoping it would. And then, bills come due. They don't have the extra money. All of a sudden, the debt starts creeping back up on the credit cards again. And, I don't want to have a repeat customer.
Right.
But I prefer not. But if it happens, it happens. But thankfully, I don't have very many.
Well, this is why people who survive financial problems, who don't invest or take the time to work with a coach afterwards, the vast majority of them will fall back into the same situation, simply because unless they knew what they did, change the habits, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
So on my Old Guy Insights website, I just did a podcast, and in it I talked about having, because I was also a search and rescue pilot, but as a pilot, the big mistake that a lot of pilots make is being a type A and thinking that they know all the answers all the time, and that's how you get yourself killed. But I was in a situation once, and I was talking to a corporate pilot friend of mine, and he said something that stuck with me all these years. He said, Steve, all good pilots have a pilot buddy that they can call when something doesn't feel right, so they can sense check it and not make stupid mistakes. And that's what working with a debt coach is all about. Sometimes you just need someone that you can talk it through, and the answer will become immediately clear.
Yeah.
All right. I could go on this stuff for hours, but is there something else you would like to cover?
No, I think we covered most of it. For me, the big takeaway, though, is, and the thing I wanted to get across on this call was, once you get out of debt, and I don't care if it's through a bankruptcy or Dave Ramsey snowball, debt set, whatever it is, that is a critical moment in time for you to take a step back and say, hey, where do we go now? What do we want to do? Because if you don't, that extra money that you're now thinking, oh, we're going to save $1,000, it will assimilate into your day-to-day living, and you'll feel like it just vanished. That's the time when you need to, hey, let's set up the savings account. Let's make sure we're, maxing our 401ks back out again, if that makes sense, or at least getting to the match. We don't have an IRA or a Roth IRA or whatever it is that we want. Let's take this extra money and let's be purposeful with it so it doesn't just get squandered.
Or 4 years from now, we want to do a trip to Italy. How can we start to plan for that now and balance it in with everything else that's going on?
Yeah.
So there are only 2 financial coaches in the world that I trust explicitly. One is myself, and the second one is you. I trust you to help people to help rebuild after bankruptcy or debt settlement without any gimmicks and getting them on the right path.
You can do it.
You can do it. All right, Damon. I guess this is the time where we do the show after the show. So
Yeah.
we should say goodbye from this show. And if you don't want to listen to us talking about the show after the show, you can just stop listening now. All right. That's lots of good advice that people need to hear.
Yeah.
Oh,
I think
frustrates me though.
Well, I mean, people are people.
Yeah.
You got different personalities. But I've seen it too many times where it's just like once someone's out of the debt, it's such a freeing feeling.
Yeah.
It's like a celebratory thing, and the celebration just never stops.
Right.
Like
it's like people say,
then,
I know what to do. Actually, if people did have like a post-financial autopsy, a lot of lessons might be learned, but immediately after you've just dealt with all the pain and stress and anguish, it's not the time where you're going to be the most introspective.
Yeah. Getting out of the debt is a big emotional deal.
Yeah.
And that's the time when you really want to take a step back and just say, okay, now that's done. Now here's where we're at in our life. What do we want to do with this? And I've just seen it so many times where it's just like, I'll hear from a client like years later after we got out of the debt and just like, yeah, I'm going to need your help again.
Yeah.
And then we start talking about it and it was like, well, once I was out of the debt, but then my kid went to college and then it's just life. Life is life and things aren't getting cheaper. It's not always just a matter of, I don't have the willpower to save the money. It's just every time you turn around,
well,
there's just, now this is this much money. And
but here's where I think a coach is the most important is when I would talk to somebody and say, I hear what you're saying, but have you thought about this? And they would go like, no, I've never thought about that before. And it changes, the way you do things. Like over the last year when those 5% savings accounts were all the rage, like park your extra money here instead of your savings account at your bank that's paying you less than 1%, right? You can make, 500% more by putting your money here and having the same amount of access to it. Chase Bank, for example, offered a savings account with very similar names where I think it was called their 360 savings account, where one of them paid like 0.5% and the other one was paying like 5.2%. And that's the kind of thing as a coach, if I had clients still, I would say to them, which account are you in? Let's look at the interest rate. Because I actually talked to somebody who didn't realize the names were so similar. They were in the wrong account. It's a friend of mine. And, all that money's lost.
Yeah. Well, you'd mentioned earlier, back in your heyday, the day when you had that service where you would essentially babysit the client's money, where they would just give you their money and then you would kind of manage it all.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that.
No,
I don't do that.
No. But one of the things that I did find when people came to me and I would say, hey, show me what your bills are. Show me your bills. There were so many times where I found that people are way overpaying for things.
Oh, yeah. And subscriptions and things that they forgot. People put things on auto pay.
Yeah.
And I know it seems like Rocket Money and stuff like that. And people think, oh, I would not do that. But if you don't think you do that, one good trick, if you don't want to do like a Rocket Money or something like that, I tell people, especially if everything's on a credit card, you can cancel the credit card or, call and say, hey, I lost my card. I need a new card.
Right. Stop
that card goes away. And then all of a sudden, all these things that you haven't thought about in years will start emailing you going, hey, we're trying to charge you $20 and put it front and center, right? And all you got to do is call the bank. Again, if you keep it simple and you put all of your charges on this one card and then pay that card off,
Yeah.
you can call your bank, and just say, yeah, I lost my card. I need a new card.
Well,
Okay,
this is why I don't like to pay anything with an ACH or bank draft. I'll put it on my card because that is a buffer. But one of my very first clients ever 30 years ago, her name was Crystal. And I'll never forget, I got her bills and I looked at them and I said, Crystal, how many places do you live in? She said, one. I just have the one. Well, why are you paying for 2 alarm services? And, she just wasn't good at attention. But that's why having somebody, check over those things or like, oh my gosh, somebody on the wrong cell phone plan, like an old legacy plan when they're offering some new program. Or another favorite is, do you realize how much you're paying for streaming, apps, cable, and all that stuff?
Well, that's a big one. That one sneaks up on you now. That with now you have your internet. I'm streaming this. Oh, I need to have Netflix. I need to have Hulu. I need to have this because this is on that. And oh, this show is on this and that. And then especially if your kids have phones too. And oh, I have Apple Music over here, and then you don't realize it because it's $9.99, $8.99, $7.99, and so it just kind of okay, whatever. But if you sat down and actually added it all up, we got rid of cable. I don't know, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, before it was the chic thing to do. And, high-speed internet was only $20 a month back then. Oh yeah, we're going to say, I'm tired of paying cable, $125 a month. I'm pretty sure cable's cheaper now.
Yeah.
By the time you start adding all the streamers, I was just looking today because my son's having his 16th birthday, and his birthday's on the 9th, his Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
And so he wanted to have a little Super Bowl get together with his buddies. And I was like, oh, okay, I need to figure out what I need to stream the Super Bowl because it's different every freaking year,
Right.
So it's like, what app do I have to pay for? Do I have to get to stream the Super Bowl? And I'm sure that's going to be $30 or $50 or whatever. And I'm almost at a point now where I'm like, I think just going back to cable or like a Dish Network, I feel like it would be cheaper and simplify my life because it would be like, oh, I want to watch this. Okay, I'll turn it on.
Well, you're absolutely right.
What app do I need?
You're absolutely right because either you get a free over-the-air antenna, those things still work, right? You can get your local.
Not really. They don't work well.
They don't work well, but you can get your local channel. But like YouTube, no, it was the NFL season package. It was through YouTube TV. They wanted $450 to watch football games. Using cable, I watched all the playoff games on my local channels, so I didn't have to pay any extra for it.
Yeah, and the YouTube TV is like, I think it's like $60 a month
or more now.
Yeah, for the YouTube TV, so you can watch the regular stuff. And I don't know. I haven't shopped this around in a little bit. What it would be, where I'm at here, but I think Dish Network packages are still probably close to what they were, $100 and $120. I'm guessing, depending on. But we don't even watch that much TV either. We canceled Hulu actually last month. I was just looking at my bill, looking at the card, and I never watch anything on Hulu.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have, I have my go-tos on a couple of shows that I like to watch, and that's about it. And I asked my wife, I was like, do you ever watch Hulu? She's like, nah, not really. We're paying $19 a month for Hulu.
Yeah. Well,
and we just discovered neither one of us ever use it. I'm like,
these days, I think that people actually really need to sit down with a spreadsheet, right? And put down, these are the programs that we want to see, and look to see where they're available, and then find what is the most economical way in order to get that package instead of having subscription creep.
Well, because things have changed so much, the way we used to do things 20 years ago versus the way we do things. But back then it was like, oh, here's all my favorite shows, and I'm going to hit the DVR to record it at 3 o'clock, so I'm not going to be here. Now, dude, I can't stand it when they release shows like, okay, this episode this week, next episode next. I can't stand it. Like, I won't do it. Right now, I'll be like, no, I'll watch that. 6 months from now when all the episodes are available.
Yeah.
Because I like to, if I'm going to sit down and watch, sometimes I want to watch 2 or 3 in a row. I don't want to just watch one and then they give the cliffhanger. And I'm like, oh, now I got to wait till next Sunday.
Well, this
to
is
see
a
what
good
happened
thing.
to John.
It's a good thing to talk through with your debt coach because, if you have something like that, like I don't even subscribe to Netflix. There's nothing that I want on it. But if something came up, I would wait 6 months and then subscribe for like a month.
Yeah, just watch a whole bunch of stuff.
Watch the whole bunch of stuff that I wanted to watch and then cancel it. I don't need to pay for it for a year.
Yeah. Well, Apple's actually got a nice, this is where also having a service that tracks all your spending really helps because, like you mentioned, a spreadsheet. Most people probably think of spreadsheets like I think of spreadsheets, which is my eyes glaze over looking at a damn spreadsheet.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't mind looking at a chart or something like that if it's all on there. I don't mind looking at a spreadsheet. I don't want to be having to fill one out and
Right.
track my spending and all that. So,
Right.
but I don't think they have the app out for Android yet. But Apple's got, and most people do have iPhones these days. They've got a great app called Copilot. It's like a budgeting software. You always got your phone on you anyway. It's actually
Yeah.
really, really good. And a lot of people jumped onto that after Mint went away, which Mint was a good one too. But if you don't have an iPhone, there's also a service called Monarch Money. But the nice thing about these things is you link them to your account, so you don't have to manually write things down, and they will track everything that you spend. And the Copilot on Apple is really good at categorizing things. I don't know if they've used an AI in there or whatever, but they're really good at kind of getting it pretty accurate.
Mm-hmm.
And all you do is link your cards that you use to spend, and all the rest of it's done automatically, and it will tell you, here's where you spent all your money. And so you can have things like streaming services and stuff like that. And at a quick glance, you could go, oh my gosh, we're spending $200 a month on this various TV entertainment streaming services. Do we, how much TV do we actually watch? Is that something we should be spending $200 on? Maybe, like you said, maybe we can narrow it down to the specific shows that we actually like, and see if we can maybe get away with spending $50 a month on these streaming services and save $100.
Yeah, let's prioritize them.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's say goodbye. I will see you. All right, bye.
Peace.
Peace.